So the first one I want to go through with you guys is the diabetes in school page. Now, normally when you look at it, when you type in NDSS diabetes in schools, looks really cool, but I want to go a little bit deeper with you and just make sure that you guys are aware of some of the amazing resources. So I am. Now, this is so super cool. I'm a parent or carer, so we're going to delve into that one. But this is what I love. You can actually, I am a principal. Now, if a principal delves into this, it is super cool because it tells them what is their duty of care for students in their school and what they need to do. It is so amazing. There's a student, school staff, and also healthcare professionals. So let's just take a glimpse into the world of a principal, just for one moment. So they have a little video about it. But then it talks about creating a safe environment to the school. And then there's a whole section here on shared responsibilities, which I'll show you. It's very super cool. So it talks about what the role is for the principal. And so many times schools, it's not that they don't care, it's just that they don't know and they don't understand. So being able to show them where they can go and being able to actually give them resources is amazing. And I've had principals actually say to me, Fee, I had no idea. And so actually giving them actually empowers them. And what some of these principals then are able to put in place is pretty amazing. And the other one I love with this, it talks about the role of staff, all of those things, but resources for the principal. And it talks about fact sheets, it talks about checklists, it talks about policies and legislation, it talks about the training programs, and also a link to diabetes management plans. Now, depending on where you are, New South Wales, Victoria, we don't have a standardised, WA, Queensland, Tassie, wherever you're from, we don't have a standardised school plan at the moment. So there's lots of different ones going around. Doesn't matter which plan is used as long as your team actually sign off on the plan. So I love this, and that's something I definitely show you when I ask you guys to actually, when you meet with the school, is to say to them, okay, when we meet, do you mind bringing an iPad along because I'm going to show you the most amazing resources, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on, but one of the things that diabetes educators, teams all around Australia say is, please try to make an appointment with your school at the start of the school year or the end of the year before so you can actually go through the plan. I'm sure a lot of you have already experienced it. You hand a plan in and you think, have they ever read it? So by taking that time and sitting down with them and going through the plan, you can actually meet those needs. Now I'm going to take us for a sneak peek into your world. So parent or carer. So this one just tells a little bit about a video. Then it just talks about managing diabetes at school, share responsibilities and resources. And you can see a common thread going through here. The same as what they say to the principal is for the families, because we're a team, we work together. So if we go into managing diabetes at schools, it talks about how it affects you as parents. It talks about understanding how type 1 diabetes fits into the school setting as well. So they are amazing. But the one I really want to show with you is, this is my favorite. And I must admit, you have to feel sorry for schools when I do education with them, because I make them sit through all these resources and checklists until I've gone through every single one, because they are so super cool. Well, it takes a good 10 minutes. All right, this is resources. Have a look at this. This section here talks about diabetes technology. So if you click on that link, it talks about all the technology that's available. The one here I love. What is the role of the parent or carer? And it actually outlines what your role is. What is your responsibility as well? And it is brilliant. All right. And no doubt we'll talk more about this as we go on tonight. But it is really clear, especially if you're going through starting off in prep, foundation or pre-kinder, depending on your state, knowing where you fit into this big picture is really important. And the most important thing to know is you're the advocate for the child. You're the voice as well. And that's really cool. So let's just go back to that one.
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky balance, and feel free for parents, I think, it can be a very tricky balance to work out how to make sure the school understand what's important, you know, how to make sure they understand what you need, what's important to you, how to keep your child safe, at the same time not freaking them out completely with your worries and fears, so that then they get a bit scared and back off and, you know, start knuckling down. So I think sometimes these resources are really clear in helping us do that, and helping us as parents actually
absolutely
try and understand what our roles are, because, you know, parents, we want to be everything and do everything and know everything, and it's not always the case that we need to. So I think it's handy to have a flick through these as well.
Yeah, and look, there's a role of the school staff, and I think this one's fantastic, no matter what year you're in. And it talks about what their job, what their duty of care is, and how all that. And it is very reassuring. It's very empowering. It's not about you must do this. It's not about this has to. It's about how can we work together as a team. Now, the one that I really love, if you go up to the search bar, which of course, you know, I can't find the search bar at the moment because I'm very special. Where is that search bar?
Is that behind your screens?
I don't even see it there. That's all right. When we find the search bar, we're going to go into one of my favorite ones, and it may be here in a moment, is camps. So if you've got anybody in their more senior primary years, there's actually a camp checklist for the school and also a camp checklist for the families as well. So in the resources, there is the back to school. I just want to show you this one. Have you all seen this? And please unmute yourselves and just tell me if you have. It is so cool. There's one here about coping with change, but it's a back to school checklist. Has everyone seen it? Oh my gosh, it is so cool. Watch this. There's actually a parent and carer's back to school checklist. Who doesn't like a checklist?
Mm-hmm.
And it goes through about the management plan. Is it more than 12 months old? Does it need updating? All the things that you need that you don't have to remember, that you can actually check off. Some of the things may not apply to you, but the majority will apply to everyone when we're talking about meeting with the school, when we're talking about insulin injections or pumps, monitoring and equipment, hypo kits, and it is super cool. So that's probably one of the things that I love, and would really say to you, if you've got to spare 15 minutes in the next couple of weeks, go through this website. It's like the gift that keeps giving. The more you delve into it, the more you find. And I would be saying to the schools love it. You know, please have a look at this. It's so cool. It's a great one there as well. So I might stop, and now a bit later I might share another resource as well, but let's get some conversation going.
Yeah. So does anyone have any burning questions that they would like to ask? A question earlier, Fee, about should schools be trained in how to use a glucagon needle, just in case? So our school is asking and trying to find out where they can learn more or obtain appropriate training. I have a recently diagnosed 14-year-old, diagnosed in August last year, so recent.
Fantastic. Do you want me to start with that
I'm
one?
going to let you do that one, Fee, is there?
I'm going to actually throw it up to everyone and just see what your experiences are with
what happened in your school,
Yeah. What do your schools ask? What have you done? Is there anything like that? Can anyone share anything that you guys have done?
Yes.
Go, Sonia.
With primary school, so he finished his 6th last year. They didn't want the glucagon pen at school, so I was lucky I only lived 5 minutes away from school, so I could get there quickly, but it was always 000 if he needed glucagon. I never got to that. But moving on to high school, they've got a nurse at school, so she wants the glucagon pen at school and she's trained to be able to use it, so that puts my mind at ease a little bit.
Anybody else? Karen?
Yeah, so we're at an independent school, and that's probably one of my questions, is how to navigate that. But part of that has been that our school refused to administer glucagon or insulin or finger prick or anything, pretty much. So that's been our experience.
So not a fun experience then, we shall say, Karen. Not enjoyable so far? It's added a certain amount of stress, but you know, it's been managed. So, but yeah, it could have been better.
I'm finding something just to share with you before I start talking. Bear with me. Mel, do you want to say anything? Look, I think so. I'm just going to talk about my personal experience, because and my understanding is, well, you might correct me, but that is not all schools will get trained up in glucagon. Not all of them want to, not all of them need to be. I think our experience was my son had the glucagon. There was one in the office and there's always one in his pricker bag. So
I always figured I'd probably get there faster than the ambulance anyway. So the deal is you call the ambulance, and then if the school was trained, I don't think we ever trained the school actually, but we always had it there. I lived across the road from school, so it wasn't a major issue, but we could get there and do what needed to do while we're waiting for the ambulance. Luckily, it never had to happen. But yeah, I think it's quite varied across from schools. And I think, Karen, I think it can be really quite difficult when schools do that hard line, no, we're not doing it. We're not going to do any of that. I think that can be quite challenging for everybody to deal with, to be honest. But we've got some questions coming through. Oh, so someone's commented to say that their school said they'd call the ambulance. Yeah. Yes, but not all ambulances do carry glucagon. That's right, isn't it, Fee?
That is absolutely right.
We were told that you have to say it's I want to say diabetes. I don't use the word diabetic because it's not my favourite word, but it's an emergency with a diabetes.
Yeah, diabetes emergency. Yep. Just remember, though, that when you have an ambulance come, they have access to IVs and glucose and all those things as well. So though they might not have glucagon, they can do other access. So once again, I'm not going to be specific to a state because we're all from everywhere. But from my experience, a couple of things, and Karen, please bring me back to you because I just want to share something with you as well. And I'm sorry you've experienced that. That's terrible. So the first thing is with glucagon. Generally, a lot of schools say, look, if we're just at school and we're within 20 minutes of a reliable ambulance service, then we're happy not to do glucagon. And what we have to remember, glucagon is not like an EpiPen. Okay, yes, it is a diabetes emergency, but it is not like an EpiPen. So that's really important to remember. And what we mean by that, with an EpiPen, that we need to, an anaphylaxis, you need to treat very, very quickly, or the outcome is extremely, I don't even, do you know what? I struggle to say what the outcome is like because my little boy has anaphylaxis and I really don't like saying what it could be. I just find that hard to actually say, but the outcome is terrible. Yeah. With type 1 diabetes and a severe hypo requiring glucagon, we have time on our side. So that's why it's reasonable if you live within 20 to 30 minutes, a lot of services will say of an ambulance, you don't need to learn how to give glucagon. Okay. But where we do actually recommend and where we highly recommend Australia-wide is if the kids are going on school camp or if the kids are going on adventure camp or if they're going overseas, that is part of their training. And the thing is, a lot of people get fearful of glucagon because, well, let's do a poll. What is glucagon? Is it glucose? Is it long-acting carbohydrate? Is it a hormone? Is it sugar? Now, you guys probably all know what it is, but you would be surprised schools don't. And when we tell them what it is and how it works, they're like, oh, is that all? The other exciting thing to tell you that we're waiting, and we are waiting patiently, but there is nasal glucagon that is in Europe and it's also in the US. And it is absolutely fabulous. It's just like a nasal spray, but we're waiting on TGA approval here.
And there is one that's been, isn't there someone's invented one that's like the EpiPen as well?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
I may have gotten the options
look
wrong.
at this.
Is that right?
You guys have all, here we go. Beautiful. Good job. Excellent. Thank you we're still going, sorry. To me, this is actually the key to breaking down to schools what is glucagon, and for them not to fear it, that they're not giving something like adrenaline or anything like that. So what it is it's actually a hormone. Good job, guys who tried for glucose. Great job. Most people think it is glucose. And great job, guys who actually said hormone as well. So basically, it is a hormone, and what its job is to actually get the liver to release its glucose stores. And when you the way I explain to schools, and it's a very Fiona, very basic way, but I talk about the liver being a pantry, okay? So the liver is a pantry, and when you open the door, you can get your food. Well, when we open the door to the liver, we can get glucose, but unfortunately, we can't just open it. Okay, we need something to trigger to get that glucose released. So glucagon is almost like a key, another key example, to open the pantry or the liver and get the glucose stores out. And all of a sudden, schools go, oh, it's not a drug? Well, yes, it is, but it's actually a hormone that acts as a key to get the glucose out. Oh, so I can't hurt them? No. You're just going to get their glucose stores. oh, so if they're not having a severe hypo when I give it, it's okay. Yeah, it is okay. Because all you're doing is accessing their glucose stores and their blood sugar will go up. When you speak to schools like that, all of a sudden they go, oh, okay, yeah, all right. And then when they do it, it's not so intimidating. But the answer, that's a very long way of thank you for that clear. Oh, good, thank you. I might keep that. People that think it's a Fiona thing, but thank you very much. I like the basics. Yeah, Mel.
Sorry, can I just say my daughter was diagnosed in June last year, and that is the first time I've had, like, I've got a great diabetes team, don't get me wrong, but thank you. That is the first time I've actually had that explained like that. I'm petrified of that orange case.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you. I'm just like, oh, now I don't have to be so scared of it. Thank you.
Oh, you're so very welcome. And do you know what? I would say that for every family that I do newly diagnosed education to, I tell them that. And then I tell them again about 8 weeks later, and they go, oh, you never told us that at the start. And it's because at the start you get so much information, your brain can't take it. But that pen is scary. That needle is scary.
You might be right. Our educator is amazing, and he more than likely did tell me that. But like you said, in that first diagnosis fog, so much is going in and out. If that's the only thing I get out of tonight, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just had someone. One of the comments was, oh, I can't see it now. Should we make sure that the school is aware of glucagon?
That's a really good question. I think the most important thing, to tell you the truth, from my perspective as a DE, and something that I know most teams, or I would say all teams around Australia would say the same thing, is it's the importance of communication. Yeah. So making the meeting, if I can give you one tip today, it would be please make time and ask for a 20 to 30 minute meeting. Ask for 30 minutes. Hey, ask for an hour. They'll probably give you 30 minutes, but that's fine.
Sit down. How many people have had a meeting with their school? How many people have actually had meetings with their school? Have you got one planned? Have you ever had to do one? Because some schools aren't open to them as well, and they just say, oh, to be right, it's okay. What's people experienced so far with that? Have they had any troubles getting meetings? Have they been able to?
So Sonia's been trying since last year.
Yeah.
Sonia, who have you gone to get that meeting, by the way?
I've spoken to the middle school receptionist. I've spoken to the middle school team coordinator, head of middle school. Yeah, I spoke to his Year 7 home group teacher at Step Up Day orientation, and he said he will send me an email. I still haven't got it.
He's going to high school.
High school. He's starting Year 7. Yeah. So Dylan was only diagnosed, was diagnosed October 21.
That's all right. That's only. It's not long.
Still early. So this whole new high school thing.
Yeah, definitely.
New experience. So I'm freaking out more than he is. But anyway, so
the way we wanted, it's okay.
End of Year 5 and then moving into Year 6 was fine. So we sort of like found our feet, and now I'm like, well, I need to speak to the school. And he had his orientation and that didn't go great. He ended up having a hypo out at lunch and didn't have his kit because the door was locked, and usually he brings his lollies. So it was a whole big thing. So I'm like, so when I saw this seminar, I'm like, yes, I'm jumping into this one. And hopefully my last thing is I'm going to just email the principal. I've got a good relationship with him. So, because my daughter goes there already. So I think I'll, I'll just email him if I don't get anywhere between now and the 2nd of February.
And what about your diabetes team? Are they useful? Are they would they be able to help?
Yeah, I'm trying to get this year's action plan completed, the new action plan, because a few things have changed since his last one. And they said first point is speak to them, see if you can arrange that meeting, and if you get nowhere, then we'll jump in.
Yeah.
But I even spoke to the Diabetes Victoria.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
And they said the same thing. See if you can get that appointment first with the school, and then if not, then speak to me. I just don't want him starting blind. Like, he knows what he needs to do, but I need to know that they're there.
It's a very big change from primary school to high school in terms of the support that you can get, I think, and it's very variable across schools. So some schools, your kids go into high school and it's like they're not on their own, but they're not, the teachers are they're not really that interested, because the kids generally can self-manage, and hopefully they're able to self-manage and look and be able to manage the day-to-day stuff. So there's some schools that, you know, go that way, and then we have other schools that are still quite, I want to say controlling, but that's not quite, that sounds a bit negative, not the right word, but still quite involved in the care.
Yeah.
So I think it's it is a bit of a mix when it comes to high school, because of that perception of independence, I guess.
And that's the feel I got, that they need to do it.
Yeah, Sonia, can I just say it's a really interesting one, and it is from around Australia, we'd all see themselves in this, is one of the things I like, and I've heard it from many teams, but one is that if you have a 13-year-old, 30% of care is for them, 70% is for the parent or an adult carer. If you have a 14-year-old, 40% is for the child or the child, and 60% is for the parent or the adult carer, and it goes up in age. And once again, when you tell a school that, they go, so they're not meant to be doing it all themselves?
Yeah.
No, yet not quite yet. They just need the support. I find that is a really cool resource. Now, guys, please bear with me. I believe this is guidelines around Australia, but I do know, Sonia, it is in Victoria. This is amazing, and you can use it. I'm pretty sure New South Wales has one as well. These are diabetes guidelines supporting students with type 1 diabetes in Victorian schools. When you email your principal, may I suggest that you maybe save this and as a PDF and send it to them, because it talks about communication, it talks about duty of care, it talks about reasonable adjustment. Now, reasonable adjustment in primary school may be different to reasonable adjustment in secondary school. What is reasonable adjustment? Well, in secondary school, reasonable adjustment is having a safe space where that person can go on bolus if they're using a pump, or can go and have an injection. And it is absolutely fantastic. And I would highly recommend even those from other states to actually have a look. And Mel, are you aware if they have it in New South Wales?
I think they have something similar, actually, but
yeah,
I may have seen this one, so I'm not sure which one's
It is absolutely brilliant. So I would definitely recommend that as well. Being in Victoria, now it's no different if you're in New South Wales, South Australia, W. If you are ever having, now it can be related to school, it can be related to, like Mel's son, who's just started a job, if that was the case. It can be related to all different things, is an advocacy officer. So in Diabetes Victoria, they have an advocacy officer, or an advocacy team. They are amazing. So, Sonia, if you're getting to a week before school starts, which is in a week's time, and you have not been able to make contact, then please reach out to the advocacy team and they will support you. Okay, as well as your actual team as well. But all the hospital teams are extremely supportive of that team, because that's what they do. They help you. So a few years ago, I had a student in year 8 that wasn't allowed to treat a hypo in science class because it could cause contamination and risk. And oh my gosh, it was a hazard. So could you imagine getting me on the other end of the phone? I could not convince them otherwise. So I said, look, that's okay. I'm just going to contact our advocacy team and they can get back to you. And they said, well, we'll find someone on our team. I said, no worries. Well, the advocacy team wrote me an email, which I then forwarded to the principal. You're not going to believe it. This kid can even eat lunch in the science lab now. All right.
So it sounds like we've got lots of people have had are having good luck getting their meetings with school, which is good. I think we might try and move on. I'm not forgotten you, Karen, about your independent school, but I was wanting to come back to another one about hypos. Someone asked earlier about hypo kits. I think it was Kyle in regards to hypo kits at school. I think this is a really interesting one. And I think, again, it's variable across schools, across families. It's, we know with type 1 is that everybody has a different idea. Even though all our kids have type 1, we all have different ways that we manage our kids type 1. Yes, there's the general principles, but we all have our own bits and pieces that work for our kids. So I think one of the things I found with my son was that it was like, so I remember a kid came to school and he came in, there was another kid diagnosed. I think my son was the first one, but then another kid joined and they came in with like a pallet of Cokes for his hypo foods and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's not what my son has for hypo. There's going to be differences across it and how people feel what they're comfortable with and what the school's policies and procedures and wishes are as well. So in regards to, so you said the school said they can only keep it in the office. Can we stress that we want one in the classroom as well? I'm just going to say yes instead of, and I'm sure Fee will hopefully agree with me. But
absolutely. Hypos need to be treated where hypos occur.
Yes.
Now, this is everywhere. This is worldwide. This is based on ISPAD guidelines. Wherever that child is, if they're in the art room, if they're in the kitchen, if they're in the sports field, they must stay there, and that's where they are treated. Mel, do you mind if I give a couple of very cool examples of hypo kids?
Just quickly, so that we're going to run out of time. I want to make sure.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Hypo kits can be something like that, and inside it you can have your glucose, you can have, if you use long-acting carb, it can be like that with little instructions inside. I would highly recommend that you use something like this that has a Cats logo on it, best team in the nation. That's really cool as well. It works really well for hypos on top and a sports kit on the bottom that can sit in the classroom. We also often talk about a diabetes bag, because if you actually own diabetes when you're a kid and you believe in what you have, that gives you power. And that gives power is knowledge. Knowledge is power. So what I say to families is no matter what age they are when they're diagnosed, take them somewhere cool and buy a cool bag that they love. Because if they love that bag, they will take that bag everywhere. There's a cool dude there that, you know, might be Harry Potter, so it's a Harry Potter bag, or it might be a Smiggles, which is like this one here, that they love, because then they are going to be happy to take it. And that bag, we would encourage they take it to every specialist, not under one patch. There is no time a child having a hypo should be taken to the office, or somebody rings and go, oh, Fee's having a hypo, can you bring the hypo kit? Nah. No, it shouldn't be. And if that is occurring, you need to speak to your team, because I guarantee they'll back you up 1,000,000%.
Yes. So my son has a kit. If I could get him quickly, I'd get it, but because it's filthy and gross and dirty, because he's 17 and it's been around for quite a few years now, but it's just one of those ones, and it goes everywhere he goes, and it always has. And off topic a tiny little bit, I think one of the things, and when he was little, he used to have a little backpack that would sit on the back of his chair, and then that would go, if they go to different classes, that would go with him. It had all his stuff in it. But as he got older, he had to carry, like a little backpack on the back. But I think one of the really handy things for kids, parents, families, if you've got your, I call it a fricker bag, apologies, that's just the way we've described it forever, and it's got everything in it. So we're setting ourselves up to succeed. So we've got a spare set change in there, he's got his meter, he's got glucose, he's got poppers, he'd have jelly beans, he'd have ketone strips, ketone meter, spare pens, spare sets, everything in one place that goes everywhere he goes. So so diabetes doesn't get to pop up in our world and cancel our day, because we've got everything with us. We went out to the footy once, he left his pump off at home in the shower. But luckily we had a pen and injection with us, so it didn't ruin our day, because that's in our kit that goes everywhere. So my tip would be, try and get into the habit. We know as kids get older, they don't want to carry stuff as much, but he's still to this day. So if he goes to a music festival, he'll downgrade a little bit so he can fit it in his pocket, so he doesn't have the backpack, but it's always around, and there's always all of that stuff with you to make sure that diabetes is not going to get in the way, because it shouldn't ever get in the way. It just gives us some extra steps. But if we're prepared, and same at school, it shouldn't ever get in the way if we've got things set up. And in terms of hypo kits at school, my son would have that one with him. There'd be stuff in the classroom, there'd be stuff in the office, and then, for backups and all sorts of things. Generally, it would be his stuff that goes with him, and that went all through high school, to be honest, as well. And then, but that's the way other schools have often said that. I don't know, I had a school once say that we were going to just have them in certain places around the playground, which was a bit weird. And we're like, no, he will have his. That made me choose which high school to go to. It was a very quick comment, but you get to be your advocate and your child's advocate in that. And I think the most important thing is they can carry that stuff and have with them, so it doesn't get in the way of their day or anyone's day.
I think, Mel, that was brilliant, Mel, but I also believe, and this is what I say to teachers when I talk to them, how we teach our kids today in foundation, grade 1, grade 2, is how they're actually going to manage their diabetes for life. Because you know what, at the moment, it's a journey. And like, I've been on this journey for 34 years and was really, really lucky that my parents were amazingly strong advocates for me. And I was allowed to do anything as long as I was set up. And I still do that. When you talk about kits, we are traveling to Port Douglas tomorrow, and I've got my kits in 3 bags. My son's got a kit, I've got a kit, my husband's got a kit, then I've got all my kits in. That's another topic, is travel. Love travel. But what I want to say to you is that what is really, really important with diabetes is that schools are about learning. Schools are about preparing kids to become older kids, to become teenagers, to become young adults, and to become adults into the world. And so part of that when you have type 1 diabetes is that you're not embarrassed by your diabetes, so you don't want to hide it. But the other thing is that it's not going to get in your way. Yeah, you might have a hypo. You've got to sit down for 15 minutes till it goes, but then you can get back in and do things. And I think that's really, 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 really important. And there's just no reason why a child can't have their hypo kit with them. Year 8s, year 9s. I'm a terrible sewer. I'm sure you guys are all good sewers. I'm friends with Spotlight. Okay, they have this glue that you can actually just cut a patch and you can glue it on your sock, right? Then what you do is you get a little bit of Velcro. You can put 2 glucose tablets in the inner part of the sock. Works beautifully, and my 14-year-olds at school do it.
Huh, there you go. That's a new one. We just have jelly beans shoved in a pocket, but
you can do jelly beans in a pocket, but you know, you can a little bit of fabric, a little bit of that glue. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. If you've got teenage girls, you can do it in a bra. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, cricket, you know, they're out on the cricket field for hours. Year 7, bit of Spotlight glue, works a treat.
So does that answer that question for hype? Anyone else got questions regarding that sort of stuff? Someone's primary school had their own kit, went from class to class. Yeah. Look,
There's some beautiful stories here in the message. I was just reading that the whole school are doing training.
There you go. You can get pocket socks with zippers for you. You don't have to make your own. I remember days of Spotlight trying to make my own Lycra pump band for my son, and just giving up and going, oh my God, it's so easy to buy one because mine weren't the right length and whatever. But I love a pump band. Makes life much easier for little kids.
And you know, at high school, a lot of teens want to support their mates. So they're more than happy to carry a few glucose tablets, carry some glucogel jelly beans, you know, anything like that in their pockets as well. I'm just reading here, and I love this. This is somebody talking about the whole school's doing training, and then they're going to zone into tier 3. On that note, there is another fantastic resource that you guys may have all heard of, T1D Learning Centre as well. The NDSS program I was telling you about before, that actually has online learning modules, and we recommend that everybody does the basic level 1, those that actually have their kids in their class, level 2, and those that are actually doing, you know, injections or monitoring glucose do level 3. I'm sharing my screen. This is another website that has some fantastic online learning modules as well.
You'll get the links to all of these, so don't worry about getting them all down.
And they get certificates as well, which they're all very happy about. You tell a teacher they're going to get a professional development sticker certificate. Oh, they love it. You give them a sticker as well, they're very happy.
Yeah, there's heaps of different bags and things that you can use for your kids to make diabetes carry with them. I think that's the thing we want it to be. We want it to be something that we just carry with us, that becomes part of our everyday routine, so it doesn't.
Oh, sweatband with the zipper.
I know. Yes. We've got to all go shopping.
Oh, Adidas cross bag. Do like the good old Adidas. Spiel belts are fantastic as well.
Spy belts, yeah.
Spiel belt.
Oh my God. Spiel belts? I don't know. Yeah, there's lots of Diabetes Easy has lots of kits, so there's all sorts of different ways. So you can go nuts buying all the sorts of stuff. But, you know, depending on how much you want to spend, how much you've got to spend, there's options that you can do that are really cheap as well, that you don't need to get all the fancy kits that have all the specific spots for things. But I guess the message is have stuff with them, because then diabetes won't ruin your day.
Can I give a top tip? LD, twice a year, $4.99. They take off the Spiel belt or Spy belt.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hot pink, blue, black, fantastic. Work really well. $4.99. They come out twice a year.
They're the ones with the zipper that expand when you, like the runner belts. Yeah. So you can put hypo stuff in that. You can put the kids' phone if their kids are younger and they need to carry their phone for their CGM. All of those sorts of things, you can load them up. So any other questions regarding hypo stuff or anything particular in that area? I guess we had someone say that their child doesn't take their hypo kit out to the playground, which is fairly common. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's fairly common. My son sometimes had stuff with him, but he wouldn't take it out because he would have checked just before he left to go out. So there was a bit of there's that kind of process, I guess. So back to you, Karen, about schools not wanting to do injections, and is anyone else having that sort of issue as well? Is that something that's some pushback for those kind of issues? Are kids on pumps? Are they able to manage? Because it is a common one, although hopefully it's getting less common. I would like to think it's getting less common with all the training that's been happening with schools. Oh, your son wouldn't do they won't do them? So did you have to go down to school for either Julie or Kyle?
Very early on,
yeah.
They were straight out, said they wouldn't do it. So they had us there for the first week until our daughter was confident, which was she was older, so she's only just been diagnosed at 10.
Yeah.
So she got confident quite quickly, but I'm super fearful for those guys out there that have kids young at the school. I understand that they're not nurses, and I appreciate that, but the blatant flat out no was a bit confronting.
Yeah, completely.
Can I just say there that schools have a duty of care?
Yeah. That
is really, really important. They may actually say to you no, but in actual fact, they're actually breaching their duty of care. And so it's very hard as a parent. It's very hard any time when you have to challenge someone. But what we need you to know is that you never have to accept that. If it doesn't sit well with you, or it is, no, we are not going to do this, we are not doing that, go to your team, please, because they can advocate for you. There's advocacy officers in different Diabetes Australia, around Australia, as well as Diabetes Australia, but there's sub-branches like Diabetes Victoria. But it is not okay for them not to be able to help your child to be at school. And that's where those guidelines, state guidelines, come in important. But please know that you're not alone in this journey. And I just can't say that enough, that, you know, like Mel said before, everyone with diabetes, you know, we all know what hypos are. We all know what it's like to give injections. But you know what? If somebody else I speak to was diagnosed in the prehistoric time like myself, I don't know what it was like for them. I know what it's like for Fee. All our journeys are different. But what's so very, very important is that you know that you are never alone. And another really cool organisation to get support and stuff is JDRF. And that team, they are super cool, and they will get you the support that you need as well. So please know that you're not alone, and you don't have to accept no. Karen, please know that, you know, there's so many people out there that can support you. And once again, I'm sorry that you've had that experience, but it's not okay for them to say no.
So how old is your child?
How old is she? She's 9. Sorry, forgot. We were told specifically, because they're an independent school, that, you know, they don't have to.
They don't abide by the rules of the.
Well, possibly that's what they meant. Yeah, but yeah, they really made the distinction there that you know, they're exempt from those guidelines. Yeah.
So interestingly, when they're exempt, so independent schools, they have to provide education like any other school does. They have to provide safety and a place of safety for that child. So unless they're saying they don't have to keep all children safe, then they can't say that at all. But can you understand where I'm sort of coming from? That it doesn't matter if you're a Catholic school, an independent school, if you're a private school, if you're a public school, if you're an off-the-grid school, it doesn't matter. The duty of care is to keep a child safe. And what they talk about when you're talking about supporting parents and supporting kids at school is reasonable adjustment. Is that a reasonable adjustment? Okay, so we're not asking teachers to carb count, to follow the child to the canteen, to get their lunch and to carb count. We're not asking the teachers when they go on camp to carb count. But what we are doing is saying, look, can you please make sure that they have got the carbs? Can you please support them to have their insulin and whatever is needed? But there is no, it doesn't matter, you know, if you go to school in Mars, just because you go to Mars and not in Australia, you still have a duty of care. Can I tell you, your issue, Karen, sadly, is worldwide, and you hear this story worldwide as well, but it is a small minority, and it is okay for you to be that roaring lion and say, no, this is not okay, and there is support for you. And your healthcare team will be your biggest advocates, but you've also got advocates in the Diabetes Australia sphere. You've got JDRF as well. And please know you're not alone. Most important thing of all.
I just want to jump in and say I think the best comment that we had from our last year's teacher was, I understand that I've done a first aid course. My response to her was, if it comes to that point where you're providing first aid to my daughter, it's probably too late.
I can trump that, Kyle. After our school camp, the teacher said she didn't die.
Oh, excellent.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I was pleased about that too.
I've got one too. I think my teacher, my son's year 2 teacher, told me that it was, she had to now go to swimming classes because he was going to do swimming and it was such a burden that she now had to attend because she hates going to swim, but because she's his teacher, she now has to go because he has type 1. I was like, well, good for you. Excellent. I'm not. You're going. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, we got forced to go to swimming.
Oh yeah, seen up. We
basically got told that we had to be there or she couldn't go.
Oh look, you know what? And I think it's really tricky. Yes, school has a duty of care. We want them to do all those things. There is this if you are able, and I'm just going to say that like that. I worked part-time when my son was diagnosed. Initially, yes, had to go to school and preschool and do injections because it was a nightmare, but eventually got him on a pump, got all that sort of stuff sorted, got the support that we needed. But there was some really cool stuff about going to excursions and going to camps and going to swimming lessons that I really relish as a parent now, that I was lucky enough to go, because I didn't get to go to any of them with my daughter. She comes home from camp or excursions like, yeah, it was good. And I've got no photos, I've got nothing, where there is this lovely bonus, if I even want to say that out loud, of my son having type 1, is that I've gotten to be part of lots of bits of his life that I probably wouldn't have been had he not had type 1. Yes, it's not essential. Yes, I was able to in bits, not everything, definitely not go to everything. I had to work, I had to do what we need to do. But you know, there were some really nice parts about that I do look back on and get a bit annoyed with my daughter when I don't get any goss or anything from excursions and camps. So it's like, yeah, it was good. So I don't get anything from those, but I wouldn't wish it on her. But that's just one of those things. I think sometimes it is easy for us to get very down on the diabetes is crap and ruin stuff and gets in the way of things. But there are some really cool bonusy bits that we get as an offside. There are some cool parts, but that's my take on it. And luckily my son's in most part, he quite liked me coming. I think I had to stop coming. He wouldn't let me go to year 7. I wasn't going to go to year 7, but that was where he drew the line as well. He was like, yeah, no. However, that was a learning curve because we didn't get enough phone. The teacher only gave me one phone number and there was Vodafone had no reception for the camp. So it was like 3 nights with not 1 ounce of contact, which was pleasant, but he's fine.
Now, do you know, I think when we hear all these stories, sometimes with diabetes, you go, well, how are we going to navigate the next 12 years, the next 9 years? Do you know, recently I've heard of a few ducks of schools that all have type 1. There's, you know, ex-Britain Prime Minister that had type 1 diabetes. There is doctors. Some of my mates I've done diabetes camp with, they're doctors now. There's physios. There's, you name it, there's teachers. There's guys that are crazy and climb Mount Everest. And ka-ching, ka-ching. If you can make money out of diabetes, you know, be an athlete. That's what I say to my young boys that like playing footy. That's it, mate. Come on. Ka-ching, ka-ching. You've got Paddy McCartan, who plays for Sydney Sun. No, Sydney. Oh, Greater Sydney. There's so many amazing people that have done so many amazing things with type 1 diabetes. So the kids are at times going to go, why am I different? Why do I have to do this? Nobody else has to do it. And I think if you can pull in some of these amazing role models from around the world, I think that's really cool. There's even an NBA player with type 1. Yeah, there's some amazing people out there that live with it. And you know what? They don't even have to do all this amazing stuff. Just these kids that, you know, are school captains, class captains, you know, they play on their local footy team. They're superheroes. They inspire others to be their best self.
Yeah. And get them to find the little perks in there. There's little perks.
Yeah.
You know, there are little perks in there that, you know, people without type 1 don't get. Yes, they don't get the other crappy parts, but there's little perks that you can find, and sometimes you need to look a bit harder, but sometimes you can find it and it, you know, can make the crappy part a bit less, I think, when you can identify those and notice them and get your kids to notice them as well. Well, my son was trying to tell me that his catchphrase was, oh, it's just my diabetes. I was trying for his year 12 yearbook, whatever, they're going to say something like that. So I don't know what he used to do at school to get out of stuff, but clearly he used to use the type 1 card a fair bit. And my grandmother, we used to use that. I think she had type 2 a million years ago, but she was on injections and she had to inject half an hour before. So we got to jump the sizzler line at when we would go to Sizzler and there was always that big line. So we got to say, oh, she's got diabetes and jump the queue. Very cool. There are some cool things that you can like.
Disneyland. You don't have to wait.
Disneyland, all sorts of stuff. You've got to find your little bonuses in there.
Gold Coast theme park, SeaWorld, Movie World. You can get a special card and you just come back. You don't have to wait in line in the heat.
Yes. We've got to balance out some of the other parts. Anything else? Any other? That's my little spiel on that. But
can I just say, my daughter's just going to year 6 this year, and her trying to, I guess, put a positive story on the education side of it. But her teacher was amazing. She was diagnosed, as I said, in June, went to camp 6 hours away from home in the October, and her teacher, they put the apps on their phone, which was great. End of last year, I rang and went, looks like she's having a low, you know. I just noticed that on my watch, he said. And I was like, sorry, you've still got the follow-up? Oh, yeah, I just like to know how she's traveling, and I was like, that's amazing to know that, yes, camp was the reason he did it, but he was like, I'm just going to keep an eye on her just so I know where she's at. And that made the world of difference to her to feel comfortable in that classroom environment, knowing that he was always able just to have a quick look and see where she was.
Yeah. There are some lovely people that will come into your kids' lives and your lives that you'll have those relationships with in these situations that we think might be really difficult to navigate. Sometimes there are these amazing people that you meet that you just think, oh, like, how lucky are we to have that person in our team, in our, on our side as our kids, and we manage, I don't like saying that journey word, but this life that we have, or this new normal that we have with type 1. So I think they're really lovely stories, Mel. I love hearing them. They give me goosebumps when I hear those sorts of stories about amazing people that come into our lives.
Great question here about general recommendations in regards to storing insulin at school. Will it be okay if the kid can keep it with him or herself? School teacher insisted that it needs to be in the office. I think it's a very age dependent thing. Having insulin in their like little diabetes bag, if you're in grade prep or pre-kinder, what you guys call it over there, is very different to a year 7 or a year 8 student. The other thing is that there is no reason why insulin, if it is going to be kept in one of those classrooms, goes into the top of a cupboard. What you just have to remember is, depending on what state you're in, I used to live in Far North Queensland, and we wouldn't want to have insulin in those classrooms if they just had fans. They get extremely warm, even with the fans going, and insulin is a protein, so it denatures, which means that it breaks down and won't work. So we don't want insulin to get overheated. So the schools will have their own policy, but what it should be really, it's related to their age. So year 7 to year 12, they should be able to keep their insulin on them. There's no issues with that if they're able to, because some kids may have other challenges. So it's very age specific. It is very individual specific as well. But there's no reason why a lot of the kids that I've worked with in our little preppies or foundation years, the teachers actually keep the insulin in a cupboard at the top, and it's just in a locked, they put it even in a locked door, and that's where it's kept.
And that links to that comment, I think, from Kyle there about, do they have to do it in the office? I would say no. I'm a fairly big advocate for our kids to being able to, as long as they're comfortable, being able to do it wherever they are. I don't want them to have to, because it just takes time away. It takes time. It makes diabetes a bigger issue than it needs to be. If you can do it where you are, obviously there are situations where it may not be always the easiest option, and schools often have some concerns about that. They think they're going to be bumped. They think they say we'll create this private space for them, for the girls. If they've got girls' dresses and they've got to lift stuff up, and you've got to be a bit careful. But ultimately, it's about diabetes being as little an impact in their day as possible. You want the impact and the time out from normal schooling to be as small as possible. So going to the office and going other places makes that experience all longer. You don't want them to go into the toilets and do them either. It's a bit gross. But again, it's up to what your kids and you and the school end up agreeing to. However, I would probably be pushing back if they said we had to. Oh, I know, actually, I would be pushing back if they said that we had to go to the office.
So, Mel, so do you know if there's any legal state-based requirement on that?
I think it's in those guidelines, though, isn't it, Fee?
It's recommended. It's not legislation. They're trying to get it pushed. I think the way you say it, Kyle, is that you say to them that this is preparing my child for the future. I think what's important with this is going to be state-based, so I'll be careful on what I say with funding. If you've got kids in childcare, in kinder and in grade prep, there is funding Okay, in kinder and pre in Victoria, we call it KISS funding, but there is funding to get support for your children at school. Often they say, no, there's not, but there is funding, and Diabetes Australia can help you source those funding source to get extra help to help, you know, different ages. And in grade prep and grade 1 especially, and kinder, there is seen that there is an extra need that is needed. And what that means, Kyle, is that if they have extra funding, then someone can come into the classroom and that student can have their insulin in the classroom. Because this is all about, we go to school to learn so we can then go into the big world as an adult. And this is part of diabetes, is that the way we start in foundation or the start in pre-kinder, that we feel accepted, our peers feel accepted, and we move through, means that when we get to when it's challenging as an adolescent, we feel accepted. And the other thing,
normalize it as a
absolutely
normalize as an activity that you do as part of your daily routine. That's not scary for the other kids to see, and it's not scary for you to do. And it's, you know, I think it's normalizing.
And it helps other kids.
Yeah,
it helps other kids. They may get diagnosed. They may have a family member, but even more than that, it builds up understanding and support. I just know, Mel, you'll be putting me on a time limit or a muzzle in a minute. Do you know what? One of my favorite sayings, and it was a 4.5-year-old that said this, and that was, Mum, it's our differences that make us special. And the reason he said that was because it was my little 4.5-year-old, who's now 9, and he was going to his first birthday party, or real big birthday party, and I had a hypo just as we were jumping in the car. And anyway, then he wanted to play soccer because he had no idea I had to sit down and fix it. So then it took half an hour, and when I hopped in the car, I was about to cry. And as I said to him, I just had the tears, and I said, I'm sorry, Alexander, today diabetes just sucks. And he replied, Mummy, it's our differences that make us special. And I think if we remember that, I think it takes us a long way.
Yeah. Agreed. So I don't even know if we should finish on that, because that's just lovely. Karen said that they had to go to sick bay to do the injections and hang out with sick people. Yeah, there are so many stories that you hear from kids in schools where they do that sort of stuff. And schools are trying to do what they think is right. Ultimately, you know, it's that kind of, I know it's a little off topic, but you know, when people say really stupid stuff to parents of kids with type 1, they say it's stupid stuff. Like they tell you about someone's great auntie whose leg got amputated, like this stuff that is really unhelpful and really not useful in any context. But what people are trying to do is they're trying to connect and find a link. And I think schools are trying their best to do what they think is right for your child. And they think, oh, if my child was having an injection, I wouldn't want them to have to do it in their class, and we want to provide them with another space. So they do that. So like Fee was saying before, it's about giving that education to the school about what's the actual important part of this is that they, you know, are learning and they're fitting in and they're doing everything without it taking too much away from their time with friends and learning. That's the important part, rather than being able to stand behind a wall to give your injection, you know, or being embarrassed. Some kids are not going to want to do it. So there are those exceptions. And I would encourage your kids, if you can, as early as possible, to do their diabetes tasks in front of people. Try as hard as you can. I know you get pushback from kids at different ages, but try as hard as you can to make it something that happens in normal everyday life, because it just makes it all so much more acceptable and stops that takeaway time from everything, because that's when the kids get older and diabetes takes up too much time. We don't want
Mel, can I share one more thing?
Yep. Our complete advocate. Yep. Karen, I think that is what we do. It's what we become. Squeaky wheel is what my mum says.
So guys, I love this. This is in those state guidelines. There's a reasonable adjustments creating a supportive environment. And just one of them I love here is additional toilet breaks. Another one I love, accommodating a student's preferences for managing their treatment in the school, including private space for checking glucose, having insulin if needed. Talks about extra checks, and it goes through all of that, including camps and all of that. And that is brilliant. So even if it is not your state, it's just worth a read. But most states do. I'm pretty sure all the states do have something very similar.
Yeah.
And this one here, I do love as well, just to bring you guys to training, building capability and confidence to support students. And it actually talks about the recommendations. It's not legislation, Kyle. We are hoping to get legislation, but this is highly recommended by the Department of Education. that they have applied training, foundation level training, and also your basic level training. I should read that the other way around. So all staff need basic level. So that's all staff in the entire school, then foundation level and applied training. So definitely I would get you guys to check out your state's one because it's worth a read.
We do need a national policy, and the diabetes in schools is a national guidelines. That's right, isn't it, Fee?
It is, and they've got a very similar thing. Yeah.
But then the states often have their own bits and pieces. So
that's the Department of Education. So that's actually the department, and I think each state has a similar thing for each Department of Education.
Yeah, I think depending on your diabetes services as well will depend on which. So these are obviously resources that Fee uses, and lots of educators use, but other ones may use the other resources and the other care plans. We didn't even talk about care plans, but the other care plans and things. So just have a look and see what your team does and what you've learned tonight, and you can hopefully get some answers to some of the things that you need, or have some information to go back to your team or your school and get things moving the way you want them to. We do have that quick question in there. You're saying how do people count carbs? How do you get them to count? Or I don't know what the going thing is now. I used to put stickers on all his food with all the carbs, and then he would add them all up and count them that way. I'd have a permanent marker on a orange. I'd write how many carbs, all that sort of stuff. Some people have books where they write things down. My son liked to pick what he wanted to eat, so there was a bit of flexibility, and then he got good at maths pretty quickly. And that's why he's good at maths, because I think he's been adding up carbs for so long. But I think there are lots of different strategies that you can do in terms of how to support your school if they're adding up the carbs and working out. I mean, you can make set meals. This is what he has at recess, lunch. I don't know if they have fruit break or things anymore. I feel like I'm so out of the primary school age now.
Masking tape and a Sharpie is great. Post-it notes, another great one.
Like a million different things that you can do to sort of manage that. But I think the flexibility is handy.
Hey Mel, kids are creatures of habit. So generally they have probably 15, 20 foods that they have for the whole term. One of my families did this amazing thing a few years back where they laminated these little cards and they just had them on a key ring. So on this day, if their child chose these 5 foods, they just took their little cards, put them on another key ring and sent them to school. And that was very cool too. School loved it. Parents loved it.
But thank you very much. It's so wonderful. I love hearing stories from other families, even the tricky ones, but I love hearing it. I think it just makes us all feel that bit more connected to everybody. And that's probably it from me. Thank you very much. I can't believe I had so many people. It's very exciting.